Welcome everyone to Awesome Truth, a wrestling book club. I'm your host, Steve Semino, and with me as always is my co-host, Walt Schwenk. Hey, Walters.
Hello, Steven. How are you going?
My friend, are you just purposely getting it wrong now?
Baby.
I am going poorly, I would say, Walt, based on the
Oh
topic of
no.
today's episode. Would you agree that this is the mood? I mean, the mood is. I would say this is one of those where the mood is dour because it was such a bad thing, but the joy is here because now we get to pick it apart and talk about it.
Yeah, I mean that's where the zag of my intro usually comes is something that's really good. I almost get less joy talking about because I don't get to really get venomous with it. Whereas something like what we're about to talk about, I get to really, 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 really shit on.
Yeah.
And that does bring me joy.
A lot of times, if we cover a good book or a good doc or whatever, we just have to find new ways of saying it's good for 30 to 40 minutes, you know? And with this movie we're talking about today, which if you've looked at the name of the episode, it's Pro Wrestlers versus Zombies. It's a feature film, Walt, that we're talking about, and it is bad. It is very, very bad.
It's a full length film.
Yeah,
I don't know where feature really gets
I don't
defined in
think
this.
I don't think it was released in theaters. I don't think I've ever. It's not a theatrical feature film by any means. Though it
Yeah,
could have been in like one, they could have rented out a theater and played it. No one can legally stop them from doing that. So that probably happened at some point, but I don't think it was in multiplexes near you at any point in 2013, 2014.
given the production value, I would venture a guess and say this was not this film did not have the budget to rent out anything for distribution.
Well, they do have. There are many pro wrestlers in this, though. Walt, we should introduce what this movie is to people who do not know it. It's if you want to watch it, it's available on pretty much every streaming platform. I watch it on Peacock. Walt, where'd you watch it?
Peacock.
Peacock. I think it's on Prime too. I think it might be on like Tubi. It's on. I think they've just far and wide said like please consume our feature film here, and the name sells it. It's written and directed by a guy named Cody Knotts, whoever that is. I mean, the name Cody, I perked up, and then I saw Knotts, and I was like, oh, I don't. That's not a guy. Cody. Wait a second.
Yeah. Cody left WWE to make this film,
Yeah, he
as
knew
we
he
all
had
know.
to. This was part of his. When he was on the Indies. This is part of his indie deal.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is literally a horror movie where pro wrestlers fight zombies, which is a conceit. I don't think that is. I think there's a world where that is entertaining and stupid and fun. This is not that movie, really. But I think like if you look at the if you happen to come across this or you hear us talking about it and you're like, oh, I want to learn more. You look at the cast list. You got Piper, you got Roddy Piper, you got Matt Hardy, you got Kurt Angle, you got Shane Douglas, you got Hacksaw Jim Duggan. Like at the very least, they got guys that you and I have heard of. So there's that gave me a little hope turning this on that maybe there was going to be some merit. I'm not saying these guys are particular in what they do to make a dime, but I was hoping that maybe just them being there would be fun.
And one could argue certain Roddy scenes or Kurt Angle literally doing all of his signature moves on zombies.
Kurt Angle putting
Is
one day in this movie for sure, and just filming his
yeah.
scenes probably in a couple hours, a couple takes, and then hit the road. I imagine.
Right, and of course, tacking a zombie's ankle is exactly how you want to.
Yeah.
Every convention we've learned with zombie movies and lore, it's like, yeah, throw an ankle lock on, and then
The
it's
second he grabs that ankle, you're like, that ankle's coming off. I would bet $1 million.
like, yeah. But let's take a step back for a second because they did get names question mark of wrestlers, and they did have zombies, and it's like. I could see someone selling this idea to someone else in the sense that, like, 8 years ago, I guess zombies were still popular. I would like to say niche audience, but like maybe not at that point. But this is certainly an attempt at getting that piece of the Walking Dead pie.
Sure. That had to be the pitch for whoever invested, right? Like, come on, people will buy those idiots out there. Well, anything with zombie in the title, they'll snap up.
Yeah, and then you have the wrestling audience, which it's like, as Shane Douglas is threatening a promoter, telling him, I broke Gary Wolf's neck. I'll break your neck. It's like, wow, we're really doing a deep cut on wrestling history. We all remember when Pitbull 1 broke his neck in the ring by a single arm DDT from Shane Douglas. So,
And then when he grabbed his halo and shook it.
right, exactly. So I could see how this was convincing to someone. Um, that's all I'll say with regards to the bigger picture scope of the business model behind combining these two genres and thinking, oh, there's something here.
Yes, and if you watch this movie or if you read about it, you'd see the name Troma come up at the top. I don't know if you know Troma, Walt, but they are in the last couple of decades they are the kings of crappy horror, like comedy horror, basically like Evil Dead style, but worse and bad and very poorly put together. They made a movie called Surf Nazis Must Die. They've made the Toxic Avenger movies. Like they're relatively well known in nerdy horror circles for putting out schlock that is tongue-in-cheek and silly. This certainly falls in that category, but as you said, the wrestling hook is an attempt to get you and I, people like us, to watch this, and we did. So I suppose they succeeded. But yeah, there's a conceit there. Like there's an element of what we're building here, just the title alone, that seems enticing. Like I wonder what this is. But you also, in the back of my mind, I don't know about you, but I knew, like, I'm like, this is obviously gonna be a no budget crap. And like sometimes no budget crap can be inventive and smart with how they put a movie together, and sometimes it can just be lazy and straightforward and just feel like they're just angled. Once they get you in, they don't care what happens next. They just want you to rent it, buy it, put it on. And I feel like this unfortunately falls in that category where you start it and you're like, okay, this is just not. No one really fleshed out the details of this one here.
So that context is important because I did not know about Troma.
Mm-hmm.
I now no longer want to know about Troma, but that's good to know because it's like I'm sitting here watching this. In the first few seconds, it's like Shane Douglas has helped produce this, and we are going so deep cuts into like wrestling, obscure wrestling Wikipedia facts. Like, so like to me, I didn't realize that this is like an attempt at a genre, like a horror genre that happens to have wrestling. I thought it was a wrestling movie that happens to have zombies where we're really trying to like speak to that audience and not like this general low budget horror audience that might exist and it might not. Maybe this is like a failed attempt at both, but like that worries me that we are referencing things like when Piper's screaming out like ask Hogan, which is a little bit more like general wrestling, but like still like in passing you say something like that, it's like you're speaking to a specific person, but like if that's not the original conceit, then they really failed on multiple levels.
Well, it's you and I've talked about this. We haven't done a ton of WWE films, but we've talked a lot about the idea of WWE making movies. And we've obviously done the Marine with The Miz and Shawn Michaels back in the day. Like we've talked about the attempt to create crossover content, movies or shows or whatever, where wrestling is folded in either explicitly or implicitly. Like A, people watch this because there's a wrestler they like in it, or B, we will literally reference wrestling in this, in this content that is otherwise unwrestling related, but we'll try and, throw a bone to the fans with Easter eggs or whatever to give them something to go on. And this is like you said, it extremely falls in the line of they are just straight up saying wrestling quotes to people. So they are calling out, like you said, Pitbull 1, like the most, like, I understand that this audience is probably an impassioned one, anyone who seeks out this movie to watch it, but still, Pitbull 1 is lost to the annals of history. Like we only know that because we grew up in the Philadelphia area and we were 8 to 10 to 12 years old when those tapes were coming out. Like no one else has any idea who the fuck Pitbull 1 is. So that is just the most sliver of an audience you're hoping to pop for that. And as you noted, if that's really what you're going for, if that's some of your first 10 minutes, it's the thing you're saying, you're going to lose people, even the committed ones who really want to see Kurt Angle fight a zombie.
And I don't mean to harp on this one scene, which was horrible and awkward and just weird and
I mean, every Shane Douglas scene is kind of weird and
well, he's like
awful.
in character. Like we're led to believe that like the franchise is Shane Douglas, and I guess that's fine because there's that like blurring the lines. But he's just like telling like he's like stupid bitch and fuck you and son of a bitch. It's like, dude, you do you want people to think that like the man Shane Douglas is like the misogynistic, like aggressive, like absolute asshole? I guess I don't know.
Yeah,
I
like
mean,
he's being mean to his son and his family too, right? Like he's being a dick to everybody pretty much in his orbit throughout the movie.
right? Yeah, I mean, like he made him very unlikable, and like actively rooting against this guy as a result. But there's a few things that were mentioned in that one scene, or in the Shane Douglas the promoter scene that like kind of sets up this whole like narrative that takes them to like West Virginia penitentiary and this whole like faux event in a haunted asylum, and turns out rib is a giant rib. It's actually zombies.
It's the ultimate rib.
And
It's the ultimate swerve and the ultimate rib.
yeah, it's a work shoot work.
Yeah.
But the reason we this is so analyzed to me is like because of the deep cut references with a and also he makes like a claim that like Vince McMahon had bounced checks. Like everyone knows Paul Heyman had bounced checks in the last however many years of ECW's existence. We all get that. We
Mm-hmm.
all know that. Or the people who know ECW and Paul Heyman. But he also is proclaiming that Vince McMahon had bounced checks, and I thought that was a pretty egregious claim to make in your low budget zombie movie.
Yeah, Vince should sue him for slander for that. That's of all the things you can say about Vince McMahon, which there are many, especially these days. There are dozens of claims you can levy against him that are probably or definitely true. But Vince bounces checks is not one I would deploy. That's probably the one thing he didn't do that was that was in his repertoire.
It's the first time I've ever heard anyone say that.
Yeah.
And this is a guy who handed the Ultimate Warrior a like $250,000 or $500,000 check when he was getting like effectively just like held for ransom at like one of the Summer Slams. It's like this guy paid.
Yeah.
He's the only promoter.
He
in
pays you for your
wrestling
show,
history
and then he
that
goes,
paid.
"Get the hell out," and then you get
Yeah,
out.
but it just moments like that.
Well,
I
Douglas
implore,
is the most. He's one of the most, as I understand it from shoot videos and podcasts and such. Douglas is always grinding an axe. Like I think he holds a lot of resentments more than most guys.
definitely. I mean,
And you can tell that, yeah, like you said, he's going into business, for himself in this zombie movie and shitting on Vince. Like, just be the character. There's no like, yeah, that's a reference that's not for anybody. There's nothing fun about that one.
I implore everybody to watch this scene for these reasons, if nothing else, just because, like, I guess this was like Shane Douglas's attempt at as like a marketing vehicle. Like, I think that's what we're going for here. Like, this felt like just like a big promotional vehicle for like this wrestler because he's like dropping all these references and he's like trying to act like a badass, like tough guy, borderline misogynistic at times, and or not borderline.
Yeah, I was gonna say
definitely.
borderline is being very generous.
Yeah. Okay, so definitely misogynistic, and it's just like, I guess I'm supposed to like want to watch him wrestle in real life after this. I'm not sure because that's not where we're positioning all this.
Well, it's very weird with Douglas because most of the people in this movie, Matt Hardy notwithstanding, and I guess Angle, so really not most people, but I guess Hacksaw and Piper, who are definitely the good guys in the movie and are portrayed as over the hill, like not like they're not treated poorly or like silly old men, but they're presented realistically as guys past their prime who are still wrestling, and that gets you sympathy, I think, as characters in the movie, and you sort of you feel for them when, spoiler alert, Hacksaw Jim Duggan needs to be killed by Roddy Piper because he's turned into a zombie, which is by far the best part of the movie. I think that scene was fantastic. but Douglas is the main character. I'd say he's not really the protagonist. It's Piper's becomes the protagonist, but Douglas is the main character, gets the most screen time. And as you said, he's playing a horrible heel, which when he was a wrestler in the '90s, he was one of the best heels out there. He was great, and like you said, the fact that he would break a man's neck and do all this stuff, like he was fantastic at playing a heel in his prime. In this movie in 2013, he's an old fat man. Like he is a Piper or a Duggan, or he should be, you know, like he's a past his prime wrestler but he's still doing this. But the fact that he plays it like I'm an active heel, like I'm an active monster and I want you to root against me, that is just very incongruous with who you're seeing in front of you on the screen. You know, like he's chunky, he's clearly he's over the hill. You're like, why is this old man being so mean to all these people? Like he's not, a plucky young wrestler. He's not someone who should even be in the ring anymore, but yet he's leaning even harder into his heel persona than he did 20 years ago. So it's a very curious choice, and as you noted, I don't really know what I'm supposed to take away from it beyond just hating Shane Douglas, which I guess mission accomplished. I'm sure that's what they were going for, but I don't really get what the plan was beyond that.
Follow me here. Shane Douglas, indie wrestler at this point.
Mm-hmm.
He
hasn't sniffed a major promotion in at least a decade.
Correct. He is, I guess, main eventing at this indie show. Murders this guy.
Extreme Rising. Don't forget to quote. It's called Extreme Rising. It could be the biggest promotion in the world. I'm cutting corners right now.
This is all about the journey we went on from a narrative perspective. He's at an indie show. He sees a woman who we later find out he was engaged romantically with. He sees another wrestler, Billy. I keep thinking Billy Butcher, but it's Battle Billy.
Billy, what's his name?
Billy, what's his name? And then he kills this guy
with a tombstone pile driver
in the ring. It's a shoot. This later you see him with his family, and he's like playing around with his, I guess, nephew or son. I think
son.
Oh, his nephew.
Was it nephew?
His brother and sister-in-law.
Oh, that's true. Okay. I thought he was cheating on his wife for a second, but I think you're probably right.
Oh, well, then, great. Another piece, a part of this roller coaster we're on.
You're probably right. That makes more sense.
So then we see him negotiating with a crooked promoter who, like, bounced checks and he's understandably upset. And then he agrees to the show. He goes to the show. He pushes this woman off a bench. The same woman who he was romantically involved with, but then I guess cheated on him. So at this point, I'm like, all right, I'm not really feeling him as a good guy. Then later he's like calling her like a bitch and like just being very aggressive towards her. I think kind of like leaves her to die with zombies.
Mm-hmm.
Then he has to fight his zombie family, which was kind of like I guess you sympathetic towards him. And then he just dies. And it's just like, how am I supposed to feel about this man? I guess is my question ultimately, because like there was so much mixed like emotional messaging. Like I understand nuance, I understand like, anti-heroes and gray areas, but like this was just like hot, cold, black, white, bouncing back and forth. And I'm just like, I guess I want him to die. And I like Piper. So like the entire time I'm watching, I'm like, yay, Piper, boo this other guy.
Yeah. I mean, what this movie does very poorly is it certainly is playing off a lot of zombie tropes from zombie movies, from horror movies in general. The humans band together against an outside monstrous entity, be it zombies, be it vampires, whatever you want it to be. Like, it's the same. There's a million movies like it. But like a lot of those movies do have the sort of chicken shit guy or girl, largely a guy, who is part of the gang by, he must be because it's humans versus everybody, so everyone has to team up. So he's sort of forced to be indoctrinated into the gang. They accept them because they all need to band together. And usually that character is either A, hoisted on his own petard at the end and gets killed because he's an asshole and deserves it, and the audience feels happy about that, or turns into a zombie or vampire themselves and fights the protagonist, which in this case would be Roddy Piper. So when I'm watching this movie, as you said, I'm waiting to see, like, okay, Douglas betrays Hacksaw Jim Duggan, which is a crime beyond belief. That's just, how dare you? Like he said, I'm pretty sure he betrays all of them at a certain point. He's a coward. He constantly runs away, pushes people in the way for his own escape. So you're certainly, by the halfway point, like, even though he's not a zombie, you're like, they're going to kill Douglas and it's going to be good. But as you said, the family thing at the end is definitely, it garners sympathy for him for no reason. It's just, and he sort of breaks down and gives, like, at the very, maybe that could be a redemptive moment if it's a different movie, like, he has to kill his family and he realizes he totally sucks and he needs to reform himself, and maybe he sacrifices himself nobly to save the day. No, that's not what happens here. He doesn't turn into a zombie either to fight Roddy Piper. He just gets strangled to death and dies, and he's gone now. And that's the end of Shane Douglas' story. So yeah, there's just things like that where, like, if this had been just fully tropey, fully cliched, fully generic, it would have been better. If they had just hit the points that every movie hits and done them fine, I'd be like, okay, that was stupid, but it wasn't sloppy, it wasn't weird, it was just very rote and very basic, and that's fine. Like, for a movie like this, I wish it had, now that it's over, I wish it had been rote and basic. Like, that would have been a plus.
I think rote and basic would have just leaned into the genre of zombies. Like, you don't need. They checked all the boxes from a low budget horror perspective, but, like, you don't need a lot of money to make sense. You just
no, you sure don't.
Common sense, and it's like we're making these decisions, and being a part of a creative process consistently in my life, you could see sometimes when you have too many cooks and, like, people are just, like, taking an idea that we all agreed upon, and then it's like, oh no, here's my version of it, here's your version of it, here's the client's version. It's like, I feel like that's kind of probably what happened, where it's like Shane Douglas is involved and Shane Douglas is paying for part of this, and it's like, well, we need Shane Douglas to kind of be the star, even though, like, we're making him a heel throughout, but Roddy is the protagonist. It's like, well, wouldn't the scenes at the top made more sense for the protagonist? Like, well, Shane Douglas is involved, so he has to be. It's like, but he doesn't want to change his character. You know what I mean? Like, you could just. That's how I envisioned this kind of unfolding and developing as a concept. But, like, ultimately, you had your zombies, you had your wrestlers. Just tell a very simple story and get the hell out. Like, they wasted a lot of time doing a lot of things that didn't actually help them from a narrative perspective. It's like, why are you doing this at all?
Yep. You hit the nail on the head. Like, there's no doubt in my mind, Shane Douglas is a producer of this movie. Whether that means he puts up money or he was just a driving force, maybe he recruited some other wrestlers, who knows? But like you said, there's no reason that the human antagonist should get we don't need family scenes with him. We don't need promoter scenes with him. We don't need any of that. Like, it's all useless. Like, we don't need his character to be developed. Like, if he's going to be the chicken shit, just let him be the chicken shit. Like, we don't need to know about his nephew. We don't need to, like, it's a weird choice. And I don't know if it's the soft in him. I don't know if it's just he wanted more screen time. Like, if I had to guess, it'd probably be a combination of both. But it is to the detriment of this bad movie that Shane Douglas imprints himself all over it. And just looks like Roddy. We've seen Roddy Piper act before. We've covered, we never covered They Live on this podcast. I would really like to do They Live at some point, because
soon.
It's a great movie. It's absolutely fantastic, and Piper is just so locked in and fantastic. But we've seen Piper on Tag Team, the Jesse Ventura Piper wrestling cop show. Is that right? Where they wrestlers turn cops, detectives?
Yes, because they went through Police Academy, I believe.
Yes. So, and he's fine in that. Like, he's charming. Like, both of them are not very good actors, but they have their moments. It works in certain places. And in this movie, same deal with Piper. Like, there are parts where you're just like, ooh, maybe they might have done one take there and it was not a good one. But there are times when he actually does add a little gravitas and has, like, the weight of, and I think has the weight of all of his years on him during it too. Like I said, I think, like, when you see him kill Hacksaw, I think you as a wrestling fan, you know this, but I think even as a movie watcher, you're like, these are two friends and one must kill the other one, and they're both, like, sort of old, and, like, it's just there's a heaviness to it that I thought was really well done. And I think that's what a Piper brings to you in a movie like this. Like, a guy who has some range and some chops and some ability to give you what you need on the screen. And then Douglas just does not have it. And, like, it's just it really it's weird to do. Like when I watched this movie, I hated Shane Douglas more by the end. Not just as a character, but like as a human. I was like, God, this guy is just insufferable. Like I just do not. I feel his fingerprints over all this, and it's like, and the fact that this is in part a weird Shane Douglas vanity project for him being an asshole is like, I don't like any part of that sentence.
Neither do I. Piper, I'm not going to sit here and say he's a gifted actor, but he's been, to your point, he's been on Hollywood sets, and he's experienced this, and so you can see him try to insert acting in in a different way in certain scenes in this movie. And what I think the problem is, though, no one else is doing that. And especially Shane Douglas, where his acting, quote unquote acting, is just like a 90-minute promo as the franchise. It's like, that's not acting, that's a promo. And Piper is trying to act, but you can judge that however you want, but he's trying to act. And just like when everybody else around him is not playing by the same rules, it just comes off just jarring, if not more than everybody else. And I'm not saying it's good or bad. It's jarring because he's the only one trying to act. It's like,
yep,
it's tough. It's like, but that being said, he's, he has those reps, and so he's trying, and I respect him for trying. And it's just unfortunate that no one else has those reps.
Yeah. And it's smart. The one thing I will say in defense of Cody Knotts, who I do not think did a good job here, but is also just some guy, so whatever. I don't want to harp on him too much. He's not. We shouldn't. I don't expect the best from him, and he did not give us the best, but that's fine. But getting Piper to play the main role is a coup of sorts. Like, it does add credibility to your project otherwise, as you're noting, and that's great. And it's like you said, it's a little out of place, but I think it still is. It's what saves this. It makes this a little more watchable. Like, it made me. I didn't hate 90 minutes of this because there was some Piper stuff that I enjoyed. But yeah, everyone else is just, I will say, like, Matt Hardy is barely in this, so again, whatever, he probably was there for a day. But after watching Matt Hardy, and also Matt Hardy at this point in his career is, the youngest person by far, wrestler-wise, prominent wrestler-wise, of the big five in this cast, is really slumming it by being in this. Like, at least Kurt Angle gets a cameo where he gets to do all of his fun moves, as you said, and like stand out and be treated like he gets the star presentation. Like, hey, Kurt Angle's here, and these 5 minutes are all his, and he does a pretty nice job with it. But Matt Hardy is just sort of in the background, like sulking and being weird and quiet and mumbly. And you're like, Matt Hardy, I've seen you cut promos in the last 5 years, 6 years for sure, where like the whole point is you're being insane and you're acting and you're big and you're exciting, and like that's why we like you again now, is because you rose back to prominence. But it's like, maybe he just didn't tap into that side of his character in 2013. But like, man, Matt Hardy is just a wet blanket here, and that was not what I expected.
No. Also, do we remember what? Back to Kurt Angle for a second. Do we remember why the promoter wanted to bring him in through the side door? Like,
I don't. I want to get into the plot a little bit before we're done, but like, I guess we can just like, why is Kurt Angle there at all? I don't know. It makes no sense. Like, so in this, there's a scene in the movie, for anyone who hasn't seen it, where the promoter ends. I think, and is it the main Satanist, or is it one of his Satanist friends? It's the main guy, right?
Wait. The
Angus?
Satanist is... Satanist is the one with the brother, Battle Billy.
Yes, I think Angus is Billy's brother.
The
bald guy? The bald, creepy guy?
Yeah, but what about the promoter guy is someone else?
Yeah, the promoter guy is Cody Knotts.
Oh, okay, right, yeah.
He's the great Cody Knotts.
Yeah, so Angus is the, like, Satanist.
Yes.
Yes.
And I think he's talking to Cody Knotts, and they're negotiating what wrestlers are going to come to the West Virginia Penitentiary zombie show. And I can't tell if like the promoter's in on the Satanist angle, or if he's just taking money and bringing, like, I don't the reasoning for having all those wrestlers come as opposed to just setting zombies loose on Shane Douglas and killing him is lost to me. I think it's lost because it makes no sense and is bad, but perhaps I just missed something.
No, actually, I was going to bring that up because in that scene, which I I encourage everybody to watch this scene too, just to see what not to do
You just want to
for
watch every Cody Knott scene.
a production. I have so many notes. But ultimately, yeah, you're right. He doesn't give a reason why he lists the wrestlers that he does. So you're left to believe, like, I guess he just needs to fill out this card with like talent to encourage Shane Douglas to get on a bus to Zombie Land, and he just like kind of rattles off names without rhyme or reason. It's like, and I want as he's like groping money, and like it's just all you can hear in the scene is like the sound of a microphone touching money. Which I won't get into the production elements of this, but what I'll say though is, yeah, he's just like groping money, and he's just like, I want Matt Hardy, and I want Kurt Angle, but only in the side door. It's like, could you explain why? Like, because otherwise you're just naming wrestlers for no reason. Like, what?
Yeah, I really don't know. It's there's a lot of strange things in this movie. My thought is maybe that was to get us, because they envisioned like there's gonna be, we're gonna run out of theater and we're gonna show this movie, and as we say each name, the crowd's gonna pop for every single guy because they're so excited. That's honestly that's the only thing I can guess as to why they would do that.
That, and they were the only bookable wrestlers for
Yeah.
the movie itself.
But why say them why explain them that way though? It doesn't make any sense.
No, it's nonsensical. You're absolutely right, and
Oh.
it's unclear if he's in on it too. I guess he's just trying to like get money, but like the more names you put out there, the less money you get because you have to pay those people to put them on a bus to West Virginia. So like, as I guess a scumbag promoter would have just suggested some of the worst names, and the Satanist is like, I don't care, book whoever you want. Just put this guy on a bus. I don't care.
Just make sure the franchise is on there.
Right. I'd say he's like, I truly do not give a shit who's on this fake ass card. Just put him on a fucking bus.
It's excuse to kill him.
So like,
Also, Shane Douglas, like, I don't know if he ever explicitly says this, but like, he calls himself franchise the whole time. Most other people call him franchise, which is an insane thing for Shane Douglas to be called in 2013. He's not the franchise anymore.
was he ever the franchise in WCW, or was he just Shane Douglas?
I think he was just Shane Douglas.
So yeah, this is like a gimmick like that's 20 years old at the time of the filming. Effectively, it's like, why? I guess we're really holding on to that. But
Yeah. Again, who is? There's just such a narrow subset of people who remember that Shane Douglas is the franchise, care about Shane Douglas, care about zombies, and would go to the effort to rent this movie. Like, that's like 70 people.
And to your point, and to loop back to a comment you made about Matt Hardy, that we went on a slight tangent, but like, you see a Matt Hardy, you're like, oh well, it's not a vehicle for him, but like at least, at that time he was probably trying to build his stock in some way, and maybe his acting chops, and like, I don't know, maybe he wasn't given the opportunity, and like his character was kind of just like a scumbag too in some ways, and so I would like to believe that he could put on a better performance, but like also too, we have to accept the fact that the Broken Universe is so specific and still kind of wrestling centric, where it's like, act like a crazy person with this like whole persona also might not translate to a movie when he's supposed to just like play himself too. So like maybe we're giving him too much credit by assuming that like what a gifted mind this guy is. Like, I still like to believe that, but also maybe he can only do that when his character, like, it's like Bray Wyatt, act like a normal person. He's like, I can't. So yeah, I will act like a demon. Like, oh, well, I can act like a weirdo demon, like hillbilly. Great.
Yeah, and if like Bray Wyatt's a great example. If you made this movie now and Bray Wyatt was unemployed and you put Bray Wyatt in it, I think there's a lot of fans out there who'd be like, ooh, man, Bray Wyatt, for his flaws during his WWE run, the cinematic matches and a lot of the weird stuff he did, like that was all so exciting. I can't wait to see it. Out of the context of wrestling, out of the context of his opponents in the promo, I don't think it would work. I don't think just because he's good at cutting a promo and being this weird character in a wrestling context, I don't know. I don't think any of us actually want to see. Even if we think we do, I don't think actually any of us would enjoy that character in a context like this. Like I don't think Bray Wyatt should be an actor just because he can cut a good promo. I don't think that's necessarily a one-to-one comparison. So your point, Matt Hardy, even if he wasn't into that character yet or didn't try and translate whatever it was, I think it's this movie is a lesson that because Shane Douglas also an incredible promo in a lot of ways in his younger days, but it does not translate to being on camera in this way.
Yeah, I mean that's why not every wrestler can just become an actor, and it's really tough, and it's a completely different skill set. And I know that's not the most revolutionary thing I've ever said, but I think we take for granted the fact that John Cena and The Rock and Batista even have made that transition. But there's a lot of wrestlers who also try and make that transition and fail miserably, and it's not an apples to apples comparison. Yes, I think a wrestler has certain skill sets that most of entertainment in Hollywood say, oh well, what the hell do they know? It's well, actually, you're putting on a live performance weekly, sometimes 3 times a week. And you're improvising and you're doing all these things that are in entertainment are valuable, but it doesn't mean you can emote and act like a person or a character that's a slight variation or has nuance. It's that's also a thing that a lot of people probably can't do. And I think, I think this just kind of, I don't want to say this reinforces it because I don't think this movie should be used in any way to compare anything. And as an example for anything, but I think everything we're saying kind of falls back to that idea of wrestler equals actor. It's well, only in 3 cases out of the hundreds, if not thousands of pro wrestlers that have ever existed. Sure.
Yeah. Even a Steve Austin, who I love to death, Triple H, who, no, I don't think anyone expected him to be good, but plenty of people who, in their characters in the wrestling ring, whatever those characters may be, do a perfectly fine to great job. But yeah, when they're it's always interesting that Batista and Cena as the 2 most recent examples, a lot of what got them famous as actual actors was their comedy chops, Batista in Guardians, Cena in Blockers, and then in, Suicide Squad, people like that they're able to play off their hugeness and their largeness by being dry and funny and weird. That's what is attractive. Not just even Rock, now in his current persona is boring a lot of people because he's just playing big strong guy, and you're what give me some depth here. Being big strong guy is not enough to get me in. Maybe a lot of people will go see Black Adam for that, but a lot of other people are that's just, there's nothing there.
Yeah, and if I was Shane Douglas, I would use something, and this is I don't want to go too deep into my history of trying to develop nonfiction television, but I think of a platform like a docuseries for a nonfiction network, a typical I can't even think of a good format, but a format where you need a host who's going to take you around places and explain things. I think a wrestler would be really good for, because there is a lot of improv. I'm not going to say the full word. And there's a lot of emoting and presenting, or even a host for I thought Jericho was good for Tough Enough hosting, you know what I mean? Or Austin, because you're presenting information and you have to kind of take on a different voice, an authoritative voice, and you know what I mean? I feel skills like that translate. And even Cena did Wipeout and other kind of vehicles like that before he got actual acting gigs. So but ultimately Shane Douglas should find a different way to promote Shane Douglas. This is not it. I'm sorry.
Well, like you said, even though this movie is not indicative of many other things, Shane Douglas is a good example for other wrestlers who are, seeking to branch out beyond their wrestling personas, or to build upon their, even more accurately, to build upon their wrestling personas in other mediums. It's this is not how it works. There's not a translation here. And certainly putting pro wrestlers on the screen playing pro wrestlers never been we've also done no holds barred on this podcast, and like it's just
Oof.
it's not a thing that you just pick up and place in a cinematic context and go, here you go, magic's gonna come. Like, it's just not the way it works.
No, and didn't work here.
No, it sure didn't. It's not a good movie. Like we said, it's available everywhere. So if you want to see all the people we just described, if you want to see Hacksaw Jim Duggan, I will say there's one scene where the zombies are all outside the ring, and in the ring is Hacksaw Jim Duggan, Roddy Piper, and Shane Douglas, and they're all sort of back to back in a little circle, fighting keeping the zombies out of the ring. And I was like, okay, like this is kind of like, as a wrestling fan, like this is kind of fun. Like, it's so stupid, and like 5 seconds later it gets back to being a trash movie. But I was like, I just like the image of these three, like, wrestlers who are otherwise not really related in my mind in any way, but they're all teaming up to like be sort of a little trio of guys fighting the enemies. I was like, okay, there's a part of my like lizard brain that is like, I like this scene, like I like this visual for what it is, and then quickly dissipated them back to saying, okay, this sucks.
Right. I mean, like when Roddy Piper tells Shane Douglas, like, you've always been a son of a bitch. It's like, when have you guys ever been in the same like state before now?
You're not the same generations at all. Like, literally, where Piper ends is like where Douglas begins.
But even like thinking about timelines of WWF at the time and like WCW, like I don't think they shared a locker room before.
They met at WrestleMania 12, maybe they might have been both on the roster.
Douglas was back in ECW in like late '95, early '96.
And maybe the end of like WCW where Piper came in every now and then. Like, I truly don't know what was happening in the WCW Sin era. Like, maybe around the Sin period, Piper and Douglas are both on payroll.
Maybe you're right. Maybe,
but that's
like,
it.
There's a
like,
very
otherwise,
small Venn diagram of their like shared careers, but
yeah. I mean, I'm sure they knew of each other, but it is. There's not this history between them. Whereas wrestling fans, like you said, a lot of this is supposed to be catnip for people like us. So having Piper and Douglas interact is not like, oh man, they're finally talking. It's like, huh? I don't really care if these two interact, which is why the Doug and Piper scene is good, because like, okay, these are both '80s WWF icons. Like, even if they weren't related to each other a lot in that period, I still believe in the relationship between them. And when Piper has to murder Hacksaw because he's a zombie, I'm like, okay, I feel a little bit.
It's very emotional.
Yeah.
And not just because
Hacksaw plays that scene well too. Like, he doesn't ham it up. He's just like I think he's just eating a person. Like, he's just sitting there.
It was emotional not because it was the only time in the movie they played something that wasn't butt rock.
Yes. Oh my God, the butt. The backdrop of every scene is butt rock.
Jesus.
The score is just like, sometimes it's like slow metal, like it's like mood metal, and then sometimes it's just
metal.
Like da-na-na-na.
It was always metal.
Yes.
Except for that scene.
Yes. They knew, Cody Knotts knows that's his money shot right there. It's like, this is the movie. This is what matters.
Oh yeah.
And that's sort of true, I guess, but there's 89 other minutes that, are lacking.
Agreed.
Well, if you want to watch Pro Wrestlers vs. Zombies, it's available everywhere. Hat tip to our friend Matt Rice, friend of the show. He clued us into this movie's existence. I'm happy he did. I think, I did not like this movie, but I kind of like knowing it exists and having seen it.
I am happy that we did this, if only to buy us
2 more weeks.
Content for the Halloween-ish season.
Yeah, we're a little late on the we didn't find out it existed until after Halloween, so that's why we couldn't get it out as a Halloween episode explicitly. But it's the fall, it's the spooky season. Like, I think, spooky season can carry out. There's a 2-week buy-in, I think, to stretch it out, so I think it still counts.
Yeah. It's
better than the Undertaker comic book, I'll say that.
Yeah. Most things are, but
well, again, if you want to watch this, it's available on almost every streaming platform that exists, and it's not good, but there's a couple things that I think, if you're a listener to this show, you'll find some joy or at least make a lot of fun of the dumb things going on in front of you. So give that a watch. If you want to listen to us talk more about Roddy Piper and Tag Team, as mentioned on the show, No Holds Barred, as mentioned on the show, all of those episodes are available in our archives at awesometruth.libsyn.com. You can subscribe to us, please, on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Stitcher, wherever podcasts are delivered, and please rate and review us if you're on those things. It helps bubble us up to the surface, gets us more listeners. We really appreciate it. And you can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at awesometruthpod. Well, great to talk the franchise with you. I don't know if we'll ever talk Shane Douglas again. So maybe this is our send off. The man with the theme, our theme song is Dean Douglas's theme music. So.
Oh right, yeah. Shout out to Dean Douglas.
Yeah, shout out to Jim Johnson for making that song that we use right now, and thanks to Shane for embodying a very bad character, which gave us our music.
I'm sure there's going to be another grassroots ECW doc out there that we will review one day, and Shane Douglas will be heavily involved.
I really don't even want to watch that though, if that exists. That makes me want to throw up thinking about more ECW content. As much as I love ECW, could there possibly be more to learn? We read the New Jack book, we read the Sabu book, we talked to John Lister. What? I don't know what else there even is.
It's just going to be more of the same.
Well, if Shane Douglas wants to come on this show and air his grievances, I will allow that. That sounds fun.
Oh yeah, friend of the show, Shane Douglas.
Yeah, please. If you've got more shit to talk, we will let you do that. We promoted your movie. Maybe we get you a few views, and maybe you want to come on as a thank you, Shane. We would enjoy that.
In which case, this movie is great.
That's right. We will happily pivot.
We are sellable. We are buyable.
We could probably we should try and get Shane Douglas after this comes out.
I'll throw him at the end. Sure.
All right. Well, thank you all so much for listening. And remember, the truth will set you free.